My name is Floyd. I am 63 years old. Right now, I am sitting in the living room of my $2.9 million house, looking out at the Pacific Ocean. My son just threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could take everything I own. But here is the thing. I am not scared. I have been waiting for this moment. On the table in front of me sits a folder that will change everything tomorrow. Have you ever trusted someone completely only to discover they were planning against you all along? If that sounds familiar, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. And please hit that like button and subscribe before we continue. Because what happened next will stay with you for a long time. Let me take you back to the beginning. To understand why this house means everything to me, you need to know about Margaret. I was born in a small town in Ohio. My father worked at a steel mill. My mother cleaned houses for wealthy families on the other side of town. We never had much, but we had each other. When I turned 18, I joined the army. Served 4 years, saw some things that changed me, and came back a different man. After that, I learned carpentry. Started from the bottom, sweeping sawdust off floors and carrying lumber for older guys who had been doing it their whole lives. By 1985, I had made my way to San Diego. California felt like a different planet compared to Ohio. The sun, the ocean, the palm trees. I was working on a housing development in a nice neighborhood when I first saw her. Margaret was 24 years old. She was a nurse visiting a patient who lived near the construction site. I remember she was wearing a light blue dress, and her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She smiled at one of the workers, and I felt something shift inside my chest. I had never believed in love at first sight, until that moment. It took me 3 days to work up the courage to talk to her. I finally caught her during her lunch break, sitting on a bench near the site. I asked if I could buy her a cup of coffee. She looked at me covered in sawdust and sweat, and she laughed. But it was not a mean laugh. It was warm, like she found something genuine in my awkwardness. That coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into walks on the beach. Walks on the beach turned into a proposal 6 months later. We got married in 1986, a small ceremony right on the sand, with maybe 30 people watching. Margaret wore a simple white dress she had found at a thrift store. I thought she was the most beautiful woman in the world. We did not have money back then. We rented a tiny apartment with 1 bedroom and a kitchen so small you could touch both walls if you stretched out your arms. But we were happy. Margaret kept working as a nurse. I kept building houses for other people, dreaming that one day I would build one for us. In 1988, our son Gerald was born. I remember holding him for the first time, this tiny creature with Margaret's eyes and my stubborn chin. I made a promise to myself that night. I would give him everything I never had. I would work until my hands bled, if that is what it took. And I did work. By 1992, I had saved enough to start my own construction company. It was just me and 2 other guys at first, taking any job we could find. Fixing roofs, building decks, renovating kitchens. Margaret handled the books at night after her shifts at the hospital. We were a team. Gerald grew up watching me work. On weekends, I would take him to job sites. He would sit on a pile of lumber eating a sandwich Margaret had packed, asking me questions about everything. Why do we use nails instead of screws here, Dad? How do you know if a wall is straight? I loved those moments. I thought they would last forever. The company grew slowly but steadily. By 2000, we had 15 employees and contracts all over San Diego County. I was making more money than I ever thought possible for a kid from Ohio. But Margaret and I stayed in our modest house. We drove used cars. We saved everything we could. Margaret had one dream. She talked about it every time we drove along the coast. She wanted a house where she could see the ocean, where she could drink her morning coffee watching the waves, where we could grow old together, listening to the water. In 2005, I found it. A house in La Jolla sitting on a cliff overlooking the Pacific. 3 stories, 5 bedrooms. A wraparound porch with views that made you forget every hard day you ever had. The asking price was $1.2 million. It was every penny we had saved over 20 years. I brought Margaret to see it without telling her why. When we pulled into the driveway, she grabbed my arm so hard I thought she would leave a bruise. She started crying before we even got out of the car. We bought it that same week. I spent the next 18 years making that house even better. I rebuilt the deck myself using wood I hand-selected from a supplier I trusted. I upgraded the kitchen, the bathrooms, the electrical system. Every improvement I made, I thought about Margaret. This is for her. This is our dream. The house appreciated over the years. By 2023, it was worth $2.9 million. But to me, it was priceless. It was not about the money. It was about what it represented. Every sacrifice, every early morning, every late night. It was proof that a kid from Ohio with nothing could build something beautiful. Then Margaret got sick. It was January of 2021 when she started coughing. She blamed it on allergies at first, then a cold that would not go away. By March, we had the diagnosis: lung cancer, stage 3. The next 18 months were the hardest of my life. Margaret fought with everything she had: chemotherapy, radiation, experimental treatments that insurance would not cover. I paid for everything without hesitation. I would have sold my soul if it meant one more day with her. Gerald came to visit 3 times during those 18 months. 3 times. His mother was dying and he came 3 times. He always had an excuse. Work was busy. The hospital needed him. He could not get away. I told myself he was building his career. I told myself he would regret it later. I made excuses for him because the alternative was too painful to accept. Margaret passed away on June the 15th, 2022. She died in our bedroom in the house she loved with my hand in hers. Her last words to me were about the house. "Promise me, Floyd. Promise me you will never sell this place. This is where we were happiest." I promised her. I meant it with every fiber of my being. The funeral was small, just family and a few close friends. Gerald stood next to me at the graveside, but he seemed distracted. His wife, Diane, kept checking her phone. Afterward, back at the house, Diane pulled me aside. She looked at the living room, the ocean view, the expensive furniture Margaret had picked out. "So, Floyd," she said, her voice too casual, "what are you planning to do with this big house now? Seems like a lot of space for just one person." My wife had been in the ground for less than 3 hours, and my daughter-in-law was already asking about the real estate. I did not answer her. I walked away and poured myself a drink. Every morning since Margaret died, I have made 2 cups of coffee. One for me. One that I set beside her photograph on the kitchen table. I talk to her while I drink mine. I tell her about my day, about the birds I saw on the porch, about how much I miss her. I know it might sound crazy, but it is the only thing that keeps me going. To understand what happened next, you need to know about Gerald, about who he was and who he became. When Gerald was a boy, He was everything a father could hope for. Smart, curious, kind. He made friends easily. Teachers loved him. He would come home from school with perfect grades and a smile that reminded me of Margaret. I remember one night when he was about 10 years old. We were sitting on the porch of our old house before we moved to La Jolla. Gerald asked me what I wanted to be when I was his age. I wanted to build things, I told him. Houses, buildings, things that would last. He thought about it for a moment. Then he said, "I want to help people, Dad. I want to be a doctor." I cannot describe how proud those words made me. I hugged him and told him he could be anything he wanted. I promised I would help him get there. And I did. When Gerald got into college, I paid for everything. When he decided to go to medical school, I sold a portion of my company to cover the tuition. Over $200,000, and I did not hesitate for a second. He was my son. He was going to be a doctor. Nothing else mattered. Gerald graduated at the top of his class. He specialized in cardiology and got a position at one of the best hospitals in California. I went to his graduation ceremony and cried like a baby. Margaret held my hand and whispered, "We did it, Floyd. We raised a good man." But somewhere along the way, something changed. Maybe it was the pressure of his career. Maybe it was the world he entered full of wealthy colleagues and country club memberships. Maybe it was just who he was becoming. I do not know. What I do know is that the calls became less frequent. The visits became shorter. The son I raised slowly disappeared behind a wall of excuses and indifference. Then he met Diane. It was 2018. Gerald brought her home for Thanksgiving, the first time we would meet her. Diane was 35 years old, a lawyer specializing in real estate and estate planning. She was beautiful in a sharp, calculated way. Dark hair, perfect makeup, expensive clothes. She walked into our house and immediately started appraising everything. I could see it in her eyes. She was not looking at family photographs or the view of the ocean. She was calculating square footage and property values. Margaret noticed it too. That night, after Gerald and Diane left, she whispered to me in bed, "I do not trust her, Floyd. There is something cold behind her eyes." I wanted to disagree. I wanted to believe my son had found a good partner. But deep down, I felt the same unease. The wedding was in 2019. It was the most expensive event I had ever witnessed. 200 guests, a 5-star venue, a dress that cost more than my first car. Diane planned everything, and somehow Margaret and I ended up seated at a table in the back, far from the action. I had written a speech. I had practiced it for weeks, wanting to share stories about Gerald growing up, about how proud Margaret and I were. But when I asked Diane about speaking, she waved her hand dismissively. "The program is already full," she said. "Maybe next time." There was no next time. I put the speech in a drawer and never looked at it again. After the wedding, Gerald changed even more. He stopped calling on his own. When he did call, Diane was always in the background listening. The conversations became transactional. "How is business?" "Dad, how is Mom feeling?" Quick questions with no real interest in the answers. When Margaret got sick, I expected Gerald to come home. I expected my son, the doctor, to be there for his mother. But he came 3 times in 18 months. 3 visits. Each one lasted less than 24 hours. Diane never came at all. She was too busy with work, Gerald explained. The last time Gerald saw his mother alive, Margaret was so weak she could barely lift her hand. But she reached out and touched his face. She told him She loved him. She told him to be good. He said he would. Then he left to catch his flight back to the city. Diane did come to the funeral, and that is when she asked me about the house. In the months after Margaret passed, I grieved alone. I wandered through the empty rooms, touching the furniture she had chosen, sitting in the spots where she used to read. The silence was overwhelming. Gerald called once a month, always brief, always with Diane hovering nearby. They started asking about my health. Was I eating well? Was I sleeping? Could I manage the house by myself? At first I thought they were being caring. I thought maybe losing Margaret had woken something up in them. I was wrong. An old friend of mine, Earl, came to visit about 3 months after the funeral. Earl is 65 now, a retired attorney who spent 30 years practicing family law. He knows things about human nature that most people would rather not learn. Over dinner, I told him about the phone calls, about Diane's questions. Earl put down his fork and looked at me hard. "Floyd," he said, "your daughter-in-law is a real estate lawyer. She specializes in estates and inheritance. She knows exactly what your house is worth, and she knows exactly how to get it." I shook my head. Gerald would never do anything to hurt me. Earl did not argue. He just said, "Keep your eyes open. That is all I am asking." I wish I had listened more carefully. 2 weeks ago, I got a text message from Gerald. It was short and strange. "Dad, Diane and I need to meet with you this weekend. It is important. Please be home Saturday morning." I typed back, asking what it was about. He did not respond. That night, I could not sleep. I sat in the living room, looking at Margaret's photograph, feeling a cold weight settling in my stomach. Something was coming. I could feel it. Saturday morning arrived grey and overcast, unusual for San Diego. I woke up early, made my 2 cups of coffee, and sat in my usual spot. The ocean looked angry that day, waves crashing against the rocks below the cliff. It felt like a warning. Gerald and Diane pulled into the driveway at exactly 10:00. I watched from the window as they got out of their car. Gerald was wearing a suit which struck me as odd for a weekend visit. Diane carried a leather briefcase, the kind lawyers use when they mean business. My heart rate increased, but I kept my breathing steady. Whatever was about to happen, I would face it like I had faced everything else in my life. Head on. I opened the door before they could knock. "Gerald," I said. "Diane, come in." They walked past me into the living room, and I noticed Gerald would not look me in the eye. He kept his gaze on the floor, on the walls, anywhere but my face. Diane, on the other hand, looked directly at me, with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Thank you for making time for us, Dad," she said. The word Dad coming from her mouth felt like sandpaper. I gestured toward the couch. "Sit down. Tell me what this is about." Diane sat first, crossing her legs and placing the briefcase on the coffee table. Gerald lowered himself beside her, still avoiding my gaze. I took the armchair across from them, Margaret's favorite spot. I wanted her close to me for whatever was coming. Diane cleared her throat. "Floyd, we have been very worried about you, living alone in this big house at your age. It is not safe." "I am 63, I said, "not 90, and I have lived here for 18 years without any problems." She nodded, that fake, concerned expression plastered on her face. "Of course, but things change. You are not as young as you used to be. Gerald and I have discussed it, and we think it would be best if you moved into a care facility. Somewhere with professionals who can look after you. I let the words hang in the air for a moment. A care facility. You mean a nursing home? An assisted living community, she corrected. Very nice ones, with ocean views and excellent staff. You would be comfortable. I looked at Gerald. Is this what you want? To put your father in a nursing home? He finally met my eyes, but only for a second. Dad, it makes sense. You cannot manage this property alone. It is too much. I have been managing it fine, I said. Diane leaned forward. Here is what we are proposing. You sign the house over to us. We will sell it and use the proceeds to pay for your care. The best facility money can buy. You will want for nothing. There it was. The real reason for this visit. Not concern for my well-being. Not love for a widowed father. They wanted the house. They wanted the $2.9 million. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not surprise. Not even anger, really. Just a deep, profound sadness. My own son. And if I refuse, I asked quietly. Diane's expression hardened. She reached into the briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. Then we will have no choice but to pursue legal action. We have grounds to petition the court and have you declared mentally incompetent. Gerald is a respected physician. I am an attorney. We have access to experts who can evaluate your cognitive state. If the court agrees with our assessment, a conservatorship will be established, and we will make decisions on your behalf. She slid the papers across the table toward me. This is the transfer document. Sign it now, and we can avoid all the unpleasantness. If you do not sign, we will see you in court. I stared at the papers. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. I had never been more lucid in my life, and these two people were threatening to take everything from me by claiming I had lost my mind. Gerald, I said, not touching the documents. Look at me. He raised his head slowly, reluctantly. Your mother died in this house. Her last words were about this house. She made me promise to never sell it. And you are asking me to break that promise so you can get your hands on the money. Dad, it is not like that he started. Then what is it like? Tell me. Explain to me how my son, the boy I raised, the boy I sacrificed everything for, is sitting in my living room, threatening to have me declared incompetent if I do not hand over my home. Gerald opened his mouth, but no words came out. Diane jumped in. Floyd, you are being emotional. This is a practical decision. The house is too valuable to sit here with one elderly man rattling around in it. Let us be reasonable. Reasonable. I wanted to laugh. My daughter-in-law, who had never shown me an ounce of genuine warmth, was lecturing me about being reasonable. I stood up slowly. I walked to the window and looked out at the ocean. Margaret's ocean. The view she had dreamed about her whole life. You have 1 week, I said without turning around. 1 week to think about what you are doing. Then come back, and I will give you my answer. Diane's voice turned sharp. Floyd, we need a decision now. I turned to face them. 1 week. That is my offer. Take it or leave it. There was a long silence. Then Diane gathered her papers and stood. Fine. 1 week. But if you do not sign, we are filing the petition on Monday. She walked toward the door. Gerald hesitated, looking at me with something that might have been regret. Or maybe I was imagining it. He followed his wife without another word. I stood at the window and watched them drive away. The clouds were starting to break sunlight piercing through in narrow beams. I thought about Margaret. I thought about the promise I made to her. Then I picked up the phone and called Earl. "We have work to do," I said. Earl arrived within the hour. He walked into my house with a laptop bag over his shoulder and a look of grim determination on his face. "Tell me everything," he said. I did. Every word Diane had spoken. Every threat she had made. The papers she had tried to force me to sign. Gerald sitting there like a puppet, unable to stand up to his own wife. When I finished, Earl was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "Floyd, this is worse than I thought. Diane knows exactly what she is doing. She is not bluffing about the conservatorship. I have seen cases like this before. Adult children, especially when there is money involved, petition the court to take control of their elderly parents. If they can find a doctor willing to say, 'You have cognitive decline,' the court might actually grant it. But I am perfectly fine," I said. "My mind is as sharp as it has ever been. I know that. But a courtroom is not about truth, Floyd. It is about perception. Gerald is a cardiologist. His testimony will carry weight. Diane will hire some psychiatrist who will ask you tricky questions designed to make you look confused. They will dig into every time you forgot where you put your keys, every time you took a wrong turn driving somewhere. They will build a case." I felt a chill run down my spine. So what do I do? Earl opened his laptop. "We fight back, but we have to be smart about it. First, you need an independent medical evaluation, not from anyone Gerald knows. We need a clean report from a reputable doctor saying you are mentally sound. I can do that. Second, we need to think about the house." He looked at me carefully. "I know what Margaret asked you to promise. But Floyd, if they win this case, they will take the house anyway, and they will put you in whatever facility costs them the least while they pocket the rest." The thought made me sick. Everything Margaret and I had built, everything she had loved about this home, reduced to a profit margin for Diane. "What are you suggesting?" I asked. Earl took a deep breath. "Sell the house. On your terms. Before they can do anything." I recoiled. I promised Margaret I would never sell. "I know." Earl's voice was gentle. "But think about it, Floyd. Margaret did not want you to keep the house, so Diane could take it. She wanted you to be happy here. If keeping the house means losing your freedom, your dignity, your ability to make your own choices, is that what she would have wanted?" I walked to the window again. The sun was fully out now, sparkling on the water. I could almost hear Margaret's voice. "The house is just walls and a roof, Floyd. What matters is what we built inside it." I closed my eyes. I let her words wash over me, and I made a decision. "Okay," I said. "We sell. But I want to choose who gets it. Not some developer who will tear it down. Someone who will love it like we did." Earl nodded. "I know a family. Couple named Thompson. He is a professor, she is a writer. They have been looking for a place to retire. Good people. They would take care of it." "Set up a meeting," I said. "But Earl, we have to move fast. I only have a week before Diane files her petition. Then let us get started." The next 3 days were a whirlwind. On Monday morning, I went to see Dr. Harrison, a geriatric specialist Earl recommended. He was 58 years old, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. He put me through every test imaginable. Memory assessments, cognitive evaluations, physical examinations, At the end of it all, he sat me down in his office and looked at me over his glasses. "Mr. Floyd," he said, "you are in excellent health for a man your age. Your cognitive function is completely normal. There is no evidence of dementia, Alzheimer's, or any other condition that would impair your decision-making ability. I will provide you with a full written report, notarized and legally binding." I shook his hand with tears in my eyes. "Thank you, Doctor. You do not know what this means to me." He smiled. "I have seen too many families try to take advantage of elderly relatives. I am glad to help someone fight back." On Tuesday, I met the Thompsons. Harold was a retired history professor, 62 years old, with a warm handshake and genuine curiosity about the house. His wife, Evelyn, was a novelist, 58, with silver hair and a soft voice. They walked through the rooms, slowly touching the walls, admiring the views. "This is remarkable," Evelyn said, standing in front of the living room window. "The way the light comes in. The sound of the waves. My wife fell in love with this view," I told her. "She used to sit right here every morning with her coffee." Evelyn looked at me with understanding. "We would take care of it, Mr. Floyd. I promise you that." I believed her. On Wednesday, we signed the contract. $2.9 million. The Thompsons paid in full with funds wired from their retirement accounts. I insisted on one condition: I would stay in the house for 30 more days to pack my things and say goodbye. They agreed without hesitation. Earl handled all the paperwork. Everything was legal binding and completely above board. The sale was registered with the county on Thursday morning. I spent Thursday night sitting on the porch watching the sunset over the ocean. I talked to Margaret like I always did. I had to do it. "Sweetheart," I said to the empty air, "I had to protect what we built from people who would destroy it. But I found good people to take over. They will love this place. I hope you understand." The wind picked up, carrying the salt smell of the sea. And for just a moment, I felt something like peace. Friday night, I did not sleep much. I kept going over everything in my mind. The documents were ready. The medical report was ready. The proof of what Gerald and Diane had done was ready. Earl had helped me compile evidence that Gerald had forged my signature on a loan application 2 years earlier, using my name as collateral for a debt he could not pay. It was fraud, clear and simple. I had all the weapons I needed. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into my crosshairs. Saturday morning came with clear skies and calm seas. I made my 2 cups of coffee, sat in my usual spot, and waited. At exactly 10 o'clock, I heard the crunch of tires on the driveway. I looked out the window. 3 cars this time, not 1. Gerald and Diane in the first. A sleek black sedan behind them, which must be their lawyer. And a third car, a grey SUV that I did not recognize. They were bringing reinforcements. They expected a fight. I smiled to myself. They had no idea what kind of fight they were walking into. The doorbell rang. I took my time answering, letting them wait. When I finally opened the door, I saw Diane standing in front, flanked by Gerald and 2 strangers. One was a man in an expensive suit, probably in his mid-40s, with the arrogant look of someone who thought he was the smartest person in any room. The other was a woman around 50, carrying a medical bag and a clipboard. Floyd, Diane said with that same fake smile. "We are here to finish our discussion. This is Mr. Granger, our attorney. And this is Dr. Klein. She is here to evaluate your mental state." I nodded slowly, as if this was all perfectly expected. "Come in. I have been waiting for you." They filed into the living room. Mr. Granger immediately began examining the house with the same appraising look Diane always had. Dr. Klein set up her materials on the coffee table, arranging her clipboard and pen with practiced efficiency. Gerald hung back near the door, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. So Diane said, taking a seat, "Have you reconsidered our offer?" I remained standing. I have thought about it very carefully. And I clasped my hands behind my back. "You want me to sign over this house? You said if I refused, you would have me declared incompetent and take it anyway." "That is correct," Mr. Granger said, speaking for the first time. His voice was smooth and condescending. "We have overwhelming evidence that you are no longer capable of managing your own affairs. Multiple incidents of memory loss, confusion, erratic behavior. Dr. Klein is here to conduct a preliminary assessment, which I am confident will support our petition." "I see," I said. "And what incidents of memory loss would those be?" "Exactly." Mr. Granger opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Your son has documented several occasions when you forgot important dates, got lost driving to familiar locations, failed to recognize acquaintances, classic signs of early-stage dementia." I looked at Gerald. "You documented these incidents." He could not meet my eyes. "It was for your own good." "Dad." I nodded slowly. "Well then, I suppose we should let Dr. Klein do her evaluation. Ask me anything, Doctor." Dr. Klein cleared her throat. She seemed slightly uncomfortable, probably sensing that something was not going according to plan. "Mr. Floyd," she began, "can you tell me today's date? It is Saturday. March 15th, 2024. And who is the current President Joe Biden? What did you have for breakfast this morning?" "2 eggs scrambled, toast with butter, coffee black." She asked more questions. I answered every single one, clearly and correctly. I saw her expression shift from confidence to confusion to something like concern. This was not what she had expected. Finally, she turned to Diane. "Mrs. Diane, I am not finding any indicators of cognitive impairment. His responses are lucid and appropriate." Diane's face tightened. "Try harder." "There has to be something, Doctor." Klein shook her head. "I cannot manufacture findings that do not exist. Based on this preliminary evaluation, Mr. Floyd appears to be mentally competent." Mr. Granger stepped forward. "That does not matter. We have Gerald's documentation. His testimony as a physician will carry significant weight with the court." I smiled. Finally, it was my turn. "Actually," I said, reaching into the drawer of the side table, "I have something for all of you." I pulled out the folder Earl and I had prepared. I handed it to Mr. Granger. "What is this?" he asked, flipping it open. "That is a complete medical evaluation performed by Dr. Harrison, one of the most respected geriatric specialists in San Diego. It was conducted 3 days ago and has been notarized and filed with the county. As you can see, it states unequivocally that I have no cognitive impairment of any kind." Mr. Granger's face went pale as he read through the documents. "But wait," I continued. "There is more." I handed over a second folder. "This is the loan application Gerald submitted 2 years ago. The one where he forged my signature to use my name as collateral for a debt of over $100,000. That is fraud, Mr. Granger. I am sure you know what happens to doctors who commit fraud." Gerald finally looked at me, his face white with shock. "Dad, I can explain." "There is nothing to explain, Gerald. You signed my name without my permission. You committed a crime. Earl has already spoken to the district attorney. If I decide to press charges, you will lose your medical license. You might go to prison. Diane turned on her husband. You told me he did not know about that. You said it was handled. Gerald stammered, but could not form words. I let them panic for a moment. Then I delivered the final blow. Oh, and one more thing. About the house. I walked to the coffee table and picked up the sales contract. The real one. The one with all the signatures and the county seal. You wanted this house so badly, I said. Well, here it is. The sale contract for $2.9 million. Diane snatched it from my hands, her eyes scanning the document. Her face transformed from confusion to rage to disbelief. You sold it? Her voice was barely a whisper. You already sold the house? 3 days ago. I confirmed. The Thompsons are lovely people. They paid in full. The money is in my account, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. Mr. Granger had gone completely silent. Dr. Klein was packing up her materials, clearly wanting no part of whatever happened next. Gerald stepped forward. Dad, you cannot do this. I already did it, Gerald. I looked at him with a sadness that went deeper than anger. Your mother asked me to protect this house, to protect what we built here. But she would never have wanted me to keep it if it meant letting you and Diane steal it from me. So I found a way to honor her wish while protecting myself. The house will be loved, the money is secure, and you get nothing. Diane exploded. This is not over. We will sue. We will take you to court. Go ahead, I said calmly. You will be suing a mentally competent man who legally sold his own property. Meanwhile, I will be filing charges against your husband for fraud. I wonder which case will get more attention. Diane's mouth opened and closed. For once in her life, she had nothing to say. I think it is time for you to leave, I said. All of you. Mr. Granger was the first to move, practically running for the door. Dr. Klein followed, murmuring something about needing to get back to her practice. Diane stormed out without another word, her heels clicking furiously on the hardwood floor. But Gerald stayed. He stood in the middle of the living room, looking lost, looking like the boy I used to know before the money and the ambition, and Diane had changed him into something I could not recognize. Why, Dad? His voice cracked. Why did it have to come to this? I walked over to him. I stood close enough to see the tears forming in his eyes. Because you let her convince you that I was just an obstacle, I said quietly. Because you forgot that I am your father. Because you chose greed over family. He broke down then. Really broke down in a way I had not seen since he was a child. He told me everything. How Diane controlled their finances. How they were hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt from her failed investments. How she had threatened to leave him if he did not find a way to get money. How he had been desperate, terrified, willing to do anything to keep his life from falling apart. I listened. I did not interrupt. When he finished, I put my hand on his shoulder. Gerald, I said, you are my son. I love you. I will always love you. But love does not mean letting you destroy me. It means showing you that there are consequences for your choices. What am I supposed to do now? He asked. You figure it out, I said. That is what being an adult means. You take responsibility. You face the consequences. And maybe if you are lucky, you find a way to become the man your mother believed you could be. He nodded slowly. Then he walked out the door. I stood alone in the living room, looking at the ocean view that Margaret had loved so much. My heart ached. For my son, for my wife, for everything that had been lost. But beneath the ache there was something else, something I had not felt in a long time. Pride in myself, in the strength I did not know I still had. The aftermath unfolded over the following months. Gerald and Diane filed for divorce 2 weeks after that confrontation. It was ugly and public, exactly the kind of spectacle Diane had always tried to avoid. She fought for half of everything, but there was nothing left to fight over. Their debts exceeded their assets. The fancy house they could not afford went back to the bank. The luxury cars were repossessed. Gerald resigned from his prestigious hospital position before they could fire him. The whispers about his fraud had already started, and it was only a matter of time before someone decided to investigate. He took a job at a small community clinic in Oregon, a fraction of his former salary, but honest work. He called me a week after he started, not to ask for money, just to talk. "I want you to know I am sorry, Dad," he said. "I know that does not fix anything, but I need you to know." I listened to his voice. It sounded different. Tired, yes, but also clearer, like some of the poison had been drained out. "I know you are sorry," I said. "The question is what you are going to do about it." He told me he had started attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings. I had not known about the gambling, but apparently that was how the debt had started before Diane's investments made it worse. He was seeing a therapist. He was trying to understand how he had become the person who could threaten his own father. I did not offer forgiveness. Not yet. That would take time. But I told him he could call me whenever he needed to talk, and I meant it. As for me, I moved out of the La Jolla house at the end of April. The Thompsons were wonderful about everything. Evelyn actually cried when she saw me packing up Margaret's things. She promised to take care of the garden Margaret had planted, the roses and hydrangeas that still bloomed every spring. I rented a small apartment in Pacific Beach, not far from the water. It has 2 bedrooms and a balcony where I can see the ocean if I lean out far enough. It is nothing like the house I left behind, but it feels like home. Earl comes by for dinner every Wednesday. We cook steaks on my little balcony grill and drink beer and talk about everything except what happened. Sometimes we play cards. Sometimes we just sit in comfortable silence. I used some of the money from the sale to establish the Margaret Floyd Foundation. It provides support for nurses who care for cancer patients, helping with childcare costs, and continuing education. Margaret would have loved it. Every check the foundation writes, I feel like she is there with me, smiling. 6 months after everything fell apart, Gerald drove down from Oregon to visit. He arrived on a Saturday morning, looking thinner than I remembered, but healthier somehow. The haunted look in his eyes had started to fade. We spent the day together. We walked on the beach. We ate lunch at a little seafood place Margaret and I used to love. He told me about his work at the clinic, about the patients who could not afford the fancy specialists in the city, about how good it felt to actually help people instead of just chasing prestige. At the end of the day, we sat on my balcony and watched the sun go down. I miss Mum, he said quietly. I miss her too. Do you think she would be disappointed in me? I thought about it for a long moment before answering. I think she would be proud of who you are becoming. That is what matters, Gerald. Not who you were, who you are choosing to be now. He nodded. We sat there until the stars came out. Father and son. 2 broken people trying to find their way back to each other. It has been a year now since that Saturday when Gerald and Diane came to take my house. I still live in my little apartment by the beach. I still make 2 cups of coffee every morning, one for me and one for Margaret. I still talk to her photograph, telling her about my days, asking for her advice, laughing at jokes only we would understand. The pain of what happened has not disappeared. I do not think it ever will. To know that my own son was willing to betray me for money, to have me declared incompetent so he could take everything I had worked for, that leaves a scar that does not heal. But scars are not the same as wounds. Wounds are open, bleeding, festering. Scars are proof that you survived something, proof that you were strong enough to heal. I think about Margaret's last words to me about keeping the house. For a while I felt guilty for breaking that promise. But the more time passes, the more I understand what she really meant. She did not care about the building. She cared about the love we built inside it, the memories, the happiness, the life we shared. Those things cannot be sold. They cannot be taken. They live in me, and they will live in me until I join her again. Gerald calls every week now. Sometimes we talk for hours, sometimes just for a few minutes. He is rebuilding his life slowly, one honest day at a time. He has started dating a woman he met at work, another doctor, someone who seems genuinely kind. I am cautiously hopeful. Do I forgive him? That is a complicated question. I love him. I always will. But trust takes time to rebuild. We are getting there step by step, the same way you cross a long bridge, one foot in front of the other. As for Diane, I do not know what happened to her, and honestly, I do not care. Some people are lessons, not lifelong relationships. She taught me that even family can harbor enemies, that love must come with boundaries, that protecting yourself is not selfishness, it is survival. Margaret used to say that a house is just walls and a roof, but a home is where love lives. I lost the house. But sitting here on my balcony, watching the ocean, she loved so much, surrounded by photographs of our life together. I know I found my way home. And maybe, just maybe, Gerald will find his way home too. Some lessons take a lifetime to learn. The important thing is that we keep learning. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up against someone you loved? Have you ever faced a betrayal from family that changed everything? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story touched you in any way, please hit that like button. It really helps more people find these stories. And if you have not already, please subscribe to the channel so you do not miss what comes next. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I wish you peace. I wish you strength. And I wish you the wisdom to know when to hold on and when to let go. Take care of yourselves out there. Until next time.